Welcome to What's Possible, Next Level Thinking with World-Class Coaches. I am thrilled to have Senya Myman with me today. Senya is the owner of Silicon Valley Change, the founder and chair. So welcome, Senya.
Delighted to be here with you. Hi, Eileen.
Hi there. One thing, or a couple things I did not tell you about Senya. Also, she is the chief people officer of a startup, as well as a best-selling author of Profit from the Positive. And I just heard from somebody, one of our clients, and Senya, I haven't even told you this. She sent me a message today saying, I forgot to tell Senya when I met her that the book that she wrote, I have never put so many notes and sticky notes and highlights on any book before. And she is a longtime HR professional. And so I thought, oh, I need to share that with you.
Oh, that's so great. She and I should get on a Zoom call and look at ours, because I also have sticky notes in my own version of Profit from the Positive, just to know exactly what line to go to and where. So that would be funny to Zoom compare. That's really
I will have to put you both in touch. I love it. So the other two things I just want to share with Senya is she is a grad from the MAP program at Penn. So she is an expert in positive psychology, and then also a doctor in organizational behavior. So Senya, that is your formal introduction. Now, I cannot wait to talk to you about bravery. And I know that you have been focused in on brave leadership for quite some time. I feel like it bubbles up in a lot of our conversations. So before we jump in, what is leadership?
It is doing something that's right, even when it is hard.
Ooh. Doing something that's right, even when it is hard. Wow. Can you give me an example use yourself as an example, something that you've done that showed brave leadership recently?
I'll use a small example, and then I could use a big example. I have colleagues and friends that call me for career advice, just like you do, Eileen. I think a lot of coaches, our friends know that they can reach out to us, and we welcome it.
Yeah.
And a friend reached out just in this past week saying, I'm about ready to kind of throw my hat in for this big role at my company. And we had a conversation. And when I used to be a coach before I was a chief people officer, and I think this will resonate with you, Eileen, I used to do a lot of question asking. Well, what do you want from the situation? How do you want to come across? What is the opportunity? How can it be good for you and good for the company? So a lot of those. And because I've known this friend for a long time and they're specifically asking for career advice, I just went for it and said, look, this is what you need to do. So you need to throw your hat in the ring. You need to say, and you've given this advice to Eileen, I have been doing this role for the past 6 months. It's literally just a promotion in title, because look at all the ththings I've been doing. So I kind of walked them through what the hiring manager may want to hear. And for me, that felt brave, because my relationship with my friend is one, very friendly, and second, they more know me as a coach rather than this authoritative, here's what you do kind of chief people officer, which is a role that I've held more recently. So for the past year and a half. And it just felt right to tell them the angle so that they could start ideating on that theme. So ideating on what specifically do I need to say to the people at my company, as opposed to should I, shouldn't I. So it felt braver, even in our own friendly relationship, to be more direct rather than more coachy and more open in this specific situation.
It's so funny that you say that. I definitely have people who will come to me and they'll tell me what hat they want me to wear. Okay, Eileen, I want you to be a coach right now. Okay, don't ask me a question. Just tell me, what do you think? I want to know what you think. And I usually will start with, tell me first what you think, and then I promise you I'll tell you what I think, because I want them to get to their own first. Right. But I love that story. And of course, I'm curious now, what happened? Did she follow that direct advice?
Yeah, right in the middle of it. So in the next couple I don't know. They're right in the middle of it. In the next couple of days, we'll know.
Excellent. Since you've been kind of more thinking a lot about brave leadership and how important it is, what have been some moves other than that you professionally in your own professional career have noticed in yourself as you've been?
You mean career moves?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well, for example, when you and I made the transition and you came on as the CEO of Silicon Valley Change, I went internal into a tech startup, and it was a very different situation for me to go as chief people officer. But I listened to the parts of myself that said this is definitely going to be interesting. It's going to be a direction it's exciting for me. I like the team, I like the leadership, I like what the company is doing. So there were a lot of things that lined up. But I think since we're talking about brave leadership and career directions, I would say for me it felt like a good stretch, a healthy stretch, like a stretch that I felt that I could do, but also wanted to explore. So I'm definitely on the chief people officer trajectory now. So even though I had worn the hat of a coach and running a group of coaches, it just feels like it's the right sense to be doing this, which is kind of funny. I mean, Eileen, I sort of, for me, as I'm answering you, it feels to me almost like at undergrad, I studied Japanese. I took 2.5 years of Japanese. It wasn't my major. My major was math and econ, but I just loved it. I just kept getting pulled to it. And similarly, this MAP program that you and I are part of, that everybody knows that Marty Seligman started, and for those who don't know, the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology at UPenn, people feel called to it, feel drawn to it. So I don't know if that's brave leadership or like listening to yourself when you feel really pulled towards something is the brave part of it. I mean, I haven't thought through that. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, it's funny as you were talking, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking that interesting, that exciting, that stretch of I know I can do it, but it's going to push me past my boundaries. But all of that requires that we know ourselves, that we listen to ourselves, and not only listen and know, but act on it. And that's where I see that bravery coming in. So it's one thing to listen to yourself, know what you want, know what feels exciting and like a stretch, but then it's taking that next step and actually acting upon it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious for you or clients who you've worked with, or even in the chief people officer position, when you see people actually acting on something, what is that ingredient that kind of lights the fire to take that step?
I don't know if you like this answer. I feel that it's a lot of iteration.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes somebody else a step to get to where they need to get to. I mean, every hiring manager, they have to make the jump to, we need to bring on this role, or we need to move this role, or we need to get rid of this role. Those are all very important decisions. And they don't, I think it's a little bit like you're drawn to a vision of your department in this way, or you're drawn to your department really being excellent as this, and so needing less of that. So that's why I say it's iterative. And it's not exactly what you asked, but this makes me think when I taught Brave Leadership as a continuing studies course at Stanford, we did a lot of experiments on iteration. So, for example, one person wanted to, this was before COVID, and one person wanted to be more open and easier for them to speak at different people at their company in person when they were just walking throughout the company. So what this person did is we watched a couple of TED Talk videos on taking 100 actions to not be freaked out about something. So this person started talking to people all over. So when they went to the grocery store, the car mechanic, they would just talk to random other people because it was for them small iterations of trying something that they then want to try in the corporate world. And then they started trying it in the corporate world. And I'll tell you how, it's so funny. Sometimes this person was describing there would be a meeting, just like we used to be used to pre-COVID, let's say 6-8 people in the room. And the person would come in and might not know 2 people. So previously, the person would have just had this meeting. And now this person reaches over, says, "Hi, I'm Tom. This is an area I'm in. Can you tell me about yourself?" So it just sets the tone because other people don't even know that people don't really know each other.
Right.
So the small iterations, let's say at a grocery store, can lead to just feeling more calm about having similar iterations in another place. So I'd say iterations is really when I've seen hiring managers, department heads, when I've seen them act in what I would describe as bravely, so doing the right thing even when it's hard, it's that they get there through iterations.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I know you said you might not like this. I love it because what we often think about is, bravery. It's like taking the full leap across the lake to, you've got 2 mountains, you're leaping from one mountain to the other. That's brave. It's like, no, it's taking a step. It's iterations and knowing with iterations for me, I think the first one is not necessarily going to be the right. I'm going to keep making it bigger or keep making it better. And that kind of can also calm the brain from thinking it has to be perfect. And I think we get into this perfect mindset, and iterations helps us say, okay, wait a second. No. And I either I just wrote about this or I thought I was going to write about it. Now I can't remember which one. However, it's not about the next step. It's about taking a next step. Yeah. And that allows you to be brave step by step.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the people who are going to be watching this have heard of the Amazon one-way door and two-way door. So the idea is a one-way door is a decision that's pretty final. It's like opening up a plant, actually, digging ground, setting up a manufacturing plant. A two-way door is doing a question and answer session on something, or it's trying something iteratively on a product that you can back up from and still meet your deadline. So I think a lot of times what you're talking about, making things that are not perfect, they're one-way doors. Sorry, they're two-way doors. You can try that door, go back and go on another chart of the flow chart, as opposed to like, this is the big decision. And then when people make that big decision and say, I actually need to bring on this team member, or I need to reorg or do this transformation in my company, it's because they've gotten there. A lot of times they will have filtered the ideas through, so their next level management is also there. So then you don't even have the comms problem, which is, I have found internally at a company, it's a really big topic. You want to do something, but everybody has to be on board. As a leadership team, you might have decided something's the right thing to do, but you haven't communicated that. This is normal. Well, like what I'm talking about is run of the mill. So just bringing everyone along, however those iterations happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's hard. Any thoughts on that in terms of once you have kind of thought it through as a group, how do you take that brave step to get it out there, even to say, assuming senior leadership, to be able to convince them of this is what we've come up with? What are some brave steps for that?
I'm thinking, I think there's so many. So I'd say there's influencing steps and then communication steps. So I'll break it out into that. Yeah. Influencing is, let's say you're a peer to someone, or let's say you're convincing someone who is senior to you. The first thing I ask when I'm about to report to somebody is what influences, not the first thing, not the very first question, but in the process of an interview is, what influences you to change your mind? And a lot of people will be really direct, like, I need to see data. Great. If I know someone needs to see data, I know I can come at that from a data background. It's good to have majored in math, to like spreadsheets, but I know I can come at that. If someone says, I need to be convinced that this is the right thing, then I need to figure out what that message is. So one is influencing. And you might not have asked the question directly, but you also have tons of experience with that person, and you see what convinces a certain person to move. Is it data? Is it that there's a lot of buy-in? Is it that the person's really motivated by long-term, or that the person's motivated by short-term? So those things, that's what I would say on the influencing side. Comments there before I touch on the comms?
I love that, because that question just alone, what information do you need to influence you to change your mind? And it makes me think of Sandy, who we work with, Sandy Lewis on our team, who does all these discs. And the disc brings up so much of that. And when she worked with organizations, when she just did a large offsite for two organizations with two departments within one organization, and they all did the disc so that they could start to see what's important to each other. And that is key information as you think about influencing. And it is funny, I love how I say it is funny. My husband always stops me, and Peter always will stop me and say, is it really funny, Eileen? No, it's not funny, but interesting is the word I'm looking for.
It could be funny.
No, but it is interesting that you bring up influence, because we are finding more and more leaders who will come to us and say, I want to be an influential leader. Well, what is an influential leader, and what do you need? What skills do you need, and what questions do you want to ask to be more influential? So I love what you just said.
Okay. Eileen, what is it for you? What influences you to change your mind?
Yeah, good question. I would say, looking at the big picture, somebody said to me, Eileen, you're always 2 steps out. So I'm thinking of consequences. Yeah. So if somebody's going to ask me about, changing my mind on something, my mind is thinking the ripple effect. And so I want to understand the ripple effect. And I would say I tend to lead with people first. How does it affect individuals? How does it affect people? So that could be anything from something within our own home to something work-wise. If we're going to make this decision, how does it affect all of our coaches? What's the impact on them?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's more than what's right in front of me. I want to know what's going to happen after that.
So the consequence is almost like long-term. What is it? What's going to happen? Yeah.
Yeah. And how will other people take this in? Because every decision that we make tends to affect a human.
Yeah.
So who's at the end of that chain and how does it affect them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So that's influential. And then communication was your next one.
I actually have been really interested in comms. When I took on the role of chief people officer, I was not in charge of comms, but I became in charge of internal comms. And and then we handed it back over to marketing. That role can live either within the people group or within the marketing group. I have loved it. So within internal comms, you really have to, our company grew from 150 to about 650 in about a year plus, a bit through acquisitions. It's all on the website. But people have to believe what's going on. And you can't believe if you don't know. And you can't believe if you don't know what's going to happen next. So there has to be some stability and consistency. Stability and consistency can't happen in one message. And I think a lot of times really any, from small to huge multi-billion-dollar public companies, any execs may think, this is going to be a really clear message. We're really going to clearly communicate that we are changing our IHR information system from this to this, or we're going to clearly communicate that we're moving from this as a company to this. It'll be really clear. Even if a message is, let's say it's crystal clear. Let's say it's clear why we're doing this as a company, what everybody will need to do, and what the individual person will need to do. You still can't do it one time. We've taken so much information, whether it's at an all hands where we're actually dedicated and we're listening the whole time, or it's a company newsletter. We need to get ready for the change. We need to hear the change. We need to know the specifics of the change. How will it affect me? That I found that to be critical in terms of comms, because sometimes you make a change and you really can't say for 600 people, how will it affect each of you? But you can generally say, or you can say the product team will be affected in this way, the engineering team. So you have some hint. So I just find that I once heard years ago at a public company that the CEO, I heard this from a senior leader, that the CEO had said the same thing 40 times. It was 4 quarters a year for 10 years, and the CEO's message was the same. And the executive that was sharing this with me was saying this in a great way, like, I know it. I can repeat the CEO's message. And I really like that. And I feel that the exec team may have a message, and it could be absolutely 100% the right thing for the company. People need to hear it. They need to hear it again. They need to know how it affects them. They need to hear it again. They need to hear it again. After they change, they need to see data and know how it went. And throughout all that, they just have to feel like it's a stable thing. That change is a stable thing, because then all the anxiety about change don't come in, because it's there. Like we know about it. So those are some of the things I found in comms.
I love that, because if you think about it, when you hear something the first time, particularly if it's something that you don't want to hear, we go to our emotional brain. And so the more you can tell it, the more we can hopefully access our thinking brain and be able to just say, okay, I'm okay, and this is what needs to happen, or this is what's going to happen. And then that repetition, it makes sense. It has a calming effect, I would imagine.
Yeah. And it's also not a one format of change, especially for internal comms. It's not just at the corporate level. Managers need to be able to have one-on-one discussions about this change. So managers need to be trained. I think also sometimes we forget at companies that change isn't just in one format. There have to be other things or other supporting mechanisms, one-on-one, one-on-many, a small group, peer comments, one-off Q&A. So just there are lots of different possible feedbacks and surveys where people can give opinions in lots of different ways, whether they're introverts or extroverts. So just listening to how people at that specific company need to interact with the information, and also addressing it in those ways as well.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think, going back to the bravery, it makes me think, it helps you feel even more brave when you know you have these different mechanisms in place to relay information to.
Yes. And for people to be able to kind of raise their hands and say, I'm not comfortable with this, or this is, and sometimes people want to raise their hand anonymously. And sometimes people want to be very clear about this is affecting me and my department, which is
Yeah.
important to hear.
Absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
May I add? You were saying tying it back to brave leadership. I think one, especially speaking to your decision influencing love language of the long term and the consequences, the downstream effects. One downstream effect of people taking more brave actions, because we're all brave to some degree. We have a range of bravery that we're comfortable with, but people taking more brave outward actions. I think something that I have observed as a downstream consequence of that is that people feel more authentic.
Yeah.
This was really evident when I taught the class on bravery several times. People near the end would say, well, I've been doing this, or I've been experimenting in this way. And I feel like I'm doing more of what's right for me. I'm setting boundaries. I'm doing the things that I think are right. And that's, I mean, as a coach, that's heaven.
That's true. That's dreamy. Yeah, that is absolutely dreamy. I love that, because that also, it's that, what's in it for me around bravery, what's possible around bravery. If I decide, okay, Senya, I hear you. I want to be more brave. I want to show up more bravely. What's in it for me? And that you might be more authentic. People might get to really know who you are, and you could show up with an internal strength that you've never felt before.
Yeah. And if you are more authentic, in addition to kind of the nice effects of people seeing the real you, maybe you also end up doing the things you more want. Maybe you start to job craft your job into what is authentic to you, into things that really light you up.
Yeah, love that. Well, Leah on our team did exactly that. I'm just really getting clear on, I know I'm here to do something, and this is where I want to be, and really crafted it. And that's, I love when our coaches, our team does that. We're not just talking about this, but we're actually living it as well.
So, 100% agree.
Oh, that's awesome. So are you ready to play 1, 2, 3 with me?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. What is one mindset shift to open the door to possibility around bravery?
Let's make the mindset shift an investment in your bravery. And this is really how I think about it. So we can invest in our health. We can drink more water. We can exercise more, or in the right way for us. An investment in your own bravery may be that you start to think about bravery more, or observe it more, or ask yourself specific questions more. So the mindset shift could be, how do I want to invest in my own bravery? That might be a daily question. That might be a reviewing the week or previewing the week kind of question. But what would be brave? For example, Eileen, brave for you and brave for me would be different things. It would be in a different domain. We would go about it in a different way. So I might reach out to somebody. You might make a connection between two people that you might not. So I just think of you and connecting. So it shows up in different ways. So what I'm saying is that mindset shift is about, how do I invest in my bravery, in my area, in my domain, and in ways that work for me.
I love that, because the whole time as we've been talking, I kept thinking bravery is a muscle, and it's investing just like within, our physical health. It's a muscle. So you're going to show up to the gym the first time and say, oh God, this is hard. And then you're going to be sore the next day. But if you keep going back, it gets less hard and you get less sore, and you build that muscle and feel good. And I think of bravery as the same.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Number 2 ideas or facts that you hope that our listener will take away around bravery.
Okay. These are both from a researcher at Stanford in neurobiology, and it is his name is Andrew Huberman. It's actually really interesting. He runs a lot of podcasts now, but I had found him maybe 6 or 7 years ago before he was doing this, and he has a lot of ideas, but a lot of research on the brain. So 2 facts to take away. One is the fear, it's not muscle, the fear center of our brain is also the creative center of our brain. So there's something about I said creative, but I meant the courage center of our brain. So the same place where we feel fear is the same place that courage resides in. I thought this was really weird when I heard it, because I thought, well, okay, we've all heard about the amygdala brain. The fear is back there. Isn't courage somewhere else? And Andrew Huberman has been really consistent in his research and in others, and just saying, look, your fear center and your courage/bravery center are in the same place. So there is always going to be a balancing act between the things you don't quite want to do, whether it's low level fear or higher fear, and the things that you feel that you ought to do to get to your more authentic self. And for me, that fact brings to mind the idea that you got to try it, even if it is hard, doing the right thing, even when it is hard, because the benefits are high for you. I don't quite know how to explain it, but just that fear and courage in the same spot, somehow it almost defines that to get to courage, you're going to have to get through some fear, whatever that fear may be for you.
Well, and it's like the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Or The Gift of Fear. Exactly. Or any of the Gavin DeBecker, the security guard the security force who knows that your bad things are going to happen. You just have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Fact number 2. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that. And I also, now you have me curious, because I kind of could see the creative part of our brain resting in that, that in the same area in a way. So now I'm curious, but okay, keep going. Number 2.
Number 2 is, and this is, it might have also been by Andrew Huberman. This is an exercise that I used to do with the bravery class, which is, it sounds a little funny. I love it. It's called walk into 100 spider webs. So if you are a person who is afraid of spiders, the right kind of antidote to that, one possible way, is to actually actively walk into 100 spider webs. And when I have presented this to a class full of business professionals, for some reason, this question always comes up. So do those 100 spider webs, do they have to have spiders in them, or can they be spider webs without spiders? And I have no idea what the research shows. So I just make it up and I say, we don't know. You're walking into 100 and you have no idea if they have the spiders or they don't have the spiders. So the fact is that one possible way of actually treating a real spider phobia is to have the person set up situations in which they are in such similar situations that it becomes familiar.
Yeah.
If that is a fact, if that is a way of treating that situation, then it's similar to the example that you and I spoke about before, Eileen, of the person who wanted to connect more with people inside the company walking around, but hesitant, uncomfortable, started doing this at car mechanics, and then felt, it's a muscle. I'm wearing this muscle. I've walked through the 43 spider webs. In our class, I think it was an 8-session class, we used to track how many of your spider webs have you gotten through it this week. And so people would get to number 43 and so on. Like, there I am. I'm getting through these spider webs.
I love it. Well, it just reminds me of exposure therapy for people with anxiety. Yeah. For people who are our listeners who have not heard of Andrew Huberman, the podcast, I just was exposed by a friend of mine the other day. He said, you don't listen to I think it's the Huberman Lab. I forget what the title of it is, but I think the Huberman Lab. It's so good. So, and I'm sure we can put that in the comments so people can find it easily. Excellent. Really the last one, 3. So we've done 1, 2, and now we're on 3. 3 actions that our listeners can take to be more brave.
I'm going to give you one as a counter to it, because I think in this case, when it's a big enough thing like bravery, having one may motivate our listeners more. So let's try it. This is the one.
Sure.
I encourage people to choose 2 things: a time of day and the question about bravery, and to ask themselves. I'll give you an example. Mine used to be bravery at 3 p.m. And the reason that I did that is because when my grandma was alive, I used to call her at 3 p.m. every day. And it was very short. Sometimes it would be just 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Sometimes it would be longer. We talked about, very small things, but it was just, that's what I would do. So for me, 3 p.m. has a significance. If you choose a time, then you'll know. And when I've done bravery at 3 p.m., I've literally put a 15-minute meeting on my calendar, Monday to Friday. I didn't do it on Saturdays and Sundays. So Monday to Friday. And my question to myself is, what is the bravest thing that I can do right now? I did that at 3 p.m. because it's not yet the end of the workday and I still can get. So if there's something that I just was procrastinating on, or felt very heavy and I couldn't just bite off a small chunk of it. What could I do? What's the bravest thing that I can do at this point? And it immediately comes to you. It's not like you have to dig with an excavator to get there. For me, I knew right away. And it felt right for me for that to pop up at 3 p.m. Even if I was in the middle of a call, I would address that right after the call. But it felt right because I knew that the goal was to still address that day. My action that our viewers can take is that people can choose what time of the day. So they can choose 6 a.m., 8 a.m. They can choose 9 p.m. before going to bed. And what is the right question for them? So when I've taught this in groups, some people would say, oh, definitely, I want to do it in the morning. And the question that they like to ask is, looking at my calendar, what meeting is a situation in which I can up the ante on my bravery?
Oh, yeah.
So they would look through their calendar really briefly in the morning, just kind of mark that or just mentally mark it, then maybe jot down a couple of notes. These are the kinds of questions I could ask or the kind of outcome that I could drive for. That's a morning question. This isn't as much me, Eileen, but there was definitely a group for whom a review kind of thing was more powerful than a forward-looking kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So these people like to, between 5 p.m. and let's say 9 p.m., review their day. And they would look at, where was I especially brave today? So they would review it, just kind of mark it down. I think if you're on a roll, just make yourself a really brief spreadsheet and just write it down if you're on that kind of roll. I never did that. For me, it was about getting the thing done. But if you're a review kind of person, do you start to see patterns? Where were you brave? Were you first brave in smaller things? And then did the things get bigger and bigger that you were brave in? So my invitation to the people who are with us here is to set for yourself a time of the day and the question for you to unlock more of your bravery.
I love that because it's practical, it's easy, and it has a place in your life. And most of us, hopefully all of us, can find 15 minutes to be able to do that. And like you said, don't make it bigger than it needs to be. It's just do it and find something. And I'm sure that then creates that snowball effect of finding, it's like, oh, I was brave in that meeting. I'm going into another meeting. I'm going to be even braver then. You keep the ball rolling.
A little bit like the 3 good things, right, Eileen? So if people are at the end of the day noticing what are 3 good things that happened, then throughout the day they go through, this is one of my 3 things that I'm going to share with my spouse or with my kids.
Yeah. One more question for you, and then I have a final question. So this one's more for you. When you were doing that, when you were putting it in your calendar, and what a powerful thing to do that when you used to connect with your grandma. That warms my heart. What changed for you when you started doing this?
I did 2 things. I did a lot of smaller tasks that I kept thinking, I'll do, even if it's something like scheduling an appointment for something. But I just kept thinking, I'm going to do the big tasks. But it's braver to schedule that appointment because you need to have it down the road, whether it's a meeting or it's just a kid's doctor appointment or something. But sometimes you're getting to the end of the day, and it's one of those things I'll do. So sometimes it's the smaller things, and sometimes it's the bigger things. So I need to have a strategic look at this problem, or put together this presentation that's not due in another month and a half. But if I don't do the bare bones of it right now, what am I going to have? So it was actually either of those 2 that got triggered, and I still had at least an hour, usually at the end of the day, to address it. And just a small idea, Eileen, it doesn't even have to be 15 minutes. The only reason I put it as a 15-minute appointment with myself is because then I can see it on the calendar. If it's 5 minutes, I can't quite see it. I don't know what it says.
Yeah.
So it could be I've got the question, I've got the answer, go. And I'm only just saying that because if people do want to do a bravery at 3 p.m. or whatever that means for them, I'd like them to not feel like it has to be a minimum length. It could be a minimal question.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. Just fit it where you can. However, make sure there's that consistency, it sounds like, and make sure you see it on your calendar. I think oftentimes we'll think, I'll be brave tomorrow. Well, if you don't plan for it, it doesn't happen. So,
and that ties with our mindset shift of investing in your bravery, somehow making that investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. So your final powerful, brave statement. What is possible when our listeners embrace bravery?
you feel good, you unlock more of what you hadn't known is yet possible, and you bring to the world more of your authentic self.
Ah, I love that. Thank you, Senya Myman, for joining me today. What a wonderful conversation.
Great speaking to you about all this. Thank you, Eileen.